an innovator to help and to survive, and to think about all of people's, exactly what the notion that you just mentioned, and I use very often also to think about responsible innovation, is the notion of care. It comes from feminism approach with Carol Gilligan and so on. It's how could I take care of each other? Take care of each other just to, and think about it in your mind, to have this very beautiful of Jardin Versailles. Thank you.
Thank you. Very, very concise. And
I'm going to make a very brief response to that, which is, of course, the Garden of Versailles was a statement of power, and we have to remember that innovation is often about power and politics, and embeds certain political requirements, political ambitions, and so on. So when we're developing responsible innovation as an approach itself, perhaps we need to be very careful to its own political constitution and how it might be used and for what motivations.
You know, the fantastic thing about capitalism is that the answer on innovation, is innovation good for you? The answer is always yes. And why is this? Well, how is this possible that we have invented a regulatory mechanism by the market to have a normative idea what you think is good is left over to the market? Any product which comes after a previous one is automatically a better one. That's the idea. But is it true? The idea, the original idea of Schumpeter of innovation as creative destruction, because innovation is always destroying something. When you look to agriculture, you see what have changed in the last 100 years. But unfortunately, I think this is where responsible innovation comes in. This idea of creative destruction has gone into the opposite in certain terms. It becomes a destructive creation. And in some way, an example of that is lying in front of me, because I bought this year's mini iPad, but it's a successor of another thing which was only 1 year on the market, but you have to buy all kinds of additional things to it again because the slots don't work anymore. They force you to buy new stuff. So it's not creative destruction, it's destructive creation. It was just about beneficial enough for me to still buy it, but there is a problem in terms of the durability of group. If you think about terms of sustainable, if we replace durable goods already within 1 year, when market forces force people to do that, then I think we have lost the original idea. And just to come back to my point of our political masters justifying innovation in terms of producing jobs. What is the most innovative company in the world right now? Well, many people say it's Apple. But I say, well, where did it produce the jobs? Well, the jobs were produced in China under labor conditions where none of you would like to work under. So think about it.
René just saying that market forces, make us buy our iPads. Now, the thing is, we have got more power than anybody else, actually. If we choose to stop buying, someone was talking about Coca-Cola causing obesity, if we choose to stop buying that product, they will take it off the shelves the next day. I mean, literally in a week, probably. So we have got the most power of all. And we can use it if we feel like it. So actually, I agree, market forces made me do it, market forces made me buy my new iPad, Your Honour. But actually, I think we've got to think about the responsibility ourselves, and what we're buying, and why we're buying it, and what we're doing. Because actually, we are the ultimate power holders in innovation, most of it, and I think we ought to think about how to use it more wisely. So the lady, the iPad, the iPod, and the new Mac as well.
So, thank you very much. We have questions from the audience. One question here, and one question there. I think that one question over there. So we have 3 now. I think we had very short, thanks also to the speakers who, all of them, were very precise. It's quite unusual for an Italian chair to see this.
He's such a bully behind the scenes. You should have seen him bullying.
I did.
No.
Okay. So we have time for questions. I also have some, but I won't start. So I have one person here, and one over there.
Let's start with the person with the speaker. Okay.
So-
I will start with the person who, because I already asked the question.
Okay, so the only one who never asked me the question is over there, so I will stick to this rule, which I think is a fine one, and then here and there.
Thank you very much. I work on the FaRInn project, and most of the partners have been chosen because they have a role in policy making, because the European territorial cooperation projects are looking at how to change policy. So when you were talking about who has the responsibility for responsible innovation, I was thinking about how we could take that back to our project and what the partners of the project can do. So I was interested in your thoughts about the role of the policymaker specifically, because yes, the innovator has to innovate, and the consumer has to consume better. I was thinking this morning about the fires in Bangladesh and everything that's happened there, which I think should be a huge push to try and change the way we consume. But what can all these projects that are being financed by the European Commission with policymakers, what can come out of them? What should the policymaker be saying to the public and to the other stakeholders to try and push this message about responsible innovation?
If there is no objection, I would collect the three questions, and then I will ask you to answer to the questions.
I'll start from here because it's easier for me.
Thank you. Well, back to power. Power and innovation has to do with power in politics, Mr. Owen said. So I think that power has to do a lot in this world with politics, but a lot with corporations and finance. Because, where is the money? You follow the money, but the money is the one who looks for the best return. And normally, as you said, most of the institutions, they go for short-term return. So we are trying to push all the work back to long-term return. Unless we don't do that, we cannot plan for innovation. And I think I have the feeling, but I would like to get your comment, that the solution to your question has to do with governance of the markets, that are institutional investors who have the resources, pension funds, foundations, the resources of us, citizens. They should get more empowered and ask to corporations to look for sustainable and long-term innovation. This is something we should all ask, but we citizens are not aware of that. So I have the feeling that it's a little bit like that. Tell me your comments there.
So then there was a little bit back to at the very back.
Direi concise accessus. Monsanto è un OGM. I think that innovation is shaping history. And history is supposed to be shaped by politics. But the point is that innovation is unpredictable. So the question, how, in your opinion, can institutions rule the unpredictable? And remember, accessus. I do agree that often innovation is a destructive creation. I'm not saying that it is a destructive creation. No, it's a very constructive creation generally, but it might be destructive. Who is going to have the collective political responsibility? Think of democratic procedures. How can you rule something that you don't understand? Sustainability is a conceptual answer, but it's not an institutional one. So I wonder if we are aware of this very serious institutional problem which is raised by innovation. Who exerts responsibility in political terms? Who runs the power which is required by innovation?
Thank you. You can
Today
read.
with Flannery, Scotland, which is not going to do it.
If there is a full questions, I would like to ask the speakers to react to these 3 questions, and then I will collect other ones. So, yeah, we can from right to left, as you.
So, you start. You perfectly right when you said that innovation is shaping history. I guess completely, fully agree with you. Innovation is shaping the future. As Nietzsche explained, shaping the future. How could we explain and shaping the future thanks to innovation? As you may know, in France, currently we have a strong debate about the marriage waiting for war, also for gay people, for lesbians and so on. What is exactly the debate on that? The debate on that is, are you allow gay people to have also a baby? That's the most important point. That's the most important of the debate. It's not about the wedding, marriage, and so on. Everybody doesn't care about that. It's about the babies. Are you supposed to do a baby if you're gay? It's an innovation issue. Because if you think about that, 30 years ago, and you help people to have baby when you have some sexual disorder and so on, but you tell to the people, you know, in 30 years, you could allow gay people to have baby. Maybe the answer was quite different. About this question, innovation is shaping the future, you're perfectly right. But where I disagree with you is, why do you want rules? Why do you want rules? Why do you want law sometimes? Why do you want stop innovation and progress and evolution? Today in France and Italy, for instance, we have the best, certainly the best quality of life in our world. Definitely, thanks to what? Thanks to health, thanks to innovations, thanks to discovery and so on. In Struggle for Life, Darwin explained very clearly that human life, as we know, it's not the final one. It's not the end. We will continue. And we will continue to improve ourselves all the time. And from Darwin to Nietzsche and others, shaping the future thanks to innovation is not a decision. It's life.
Access to
Sorry?
access to and risks, danger.
But you know, the risk is the definition of what you have in your mind about the risk. Because plenty of civilizations disappeared in the past.
Do you accept disappear?
Yes, because we fear, we care about the future, we care about, am I be still alive within the next 50 or 100 years? Or my children, my son and grandson and so on. We would like to protect our little knowledge of our body, life and human life. But definitely not. History is an evolution in every aspect of life.
Okay, well, 3 really great questions, and I wish I had time to answer all 3 of them. But I'm going to focus on the question of power, because I find that fascinating. And if you've read about Andy Van Sturben's work on power and innovation, it's worth going there, because he does a lot of stuff on that. But anyway, so what this conversation has reminded me today is when you start talking about power and innovation, that's a really long way away from how we normally talk about responsible innovation so far. When we talk about responsible innovation, it's often reduced to a discussion of risk and maybe benefits or cost benefits. The point that you're making is fundamental in that it means we have to start somewhere else. It's a political decision, a political context. So we're no longer talking about risks. We're talking not just about whether it's short or long term, but what kind of return we want our companies to bring. So I have an MBA. We teach innovation management on our MBA course. The kinds of people that come on our MBA course now are not just interested in making the fastest amount of money for their shareholders and using innovation to do that. They come from all over the world, from India, they're interested in social innovation. They want to know how to innovate, but not for that specific end. And they're asking the question, what do we want innovation to bring? The question that René has already mentioned. And so if there's one thing that comes away from today, it's power and other things like that matter. And we have to include questions of risk. Those are really important questions, particularly, but we have to acknowledge our responsibility and get to the power. Get to those kinds of questions first.
See, I cannot use this technology, right? Well, I will try sort of in one go try to respond to all elements raised by the three speakers. You know, about the responsibility of policy or policy makers, you know, you can go one step back, as I did in my reflection. You know, what is the responsibility of the state? And there, I think, you know, Richard and I are on the same line of thinking. There's emphasis on addressing the risk, but then you can also see that the state explicitly has a task to address the risk. We have procedures in place. You know, we can argue whether they're perfect or not, but there are procedures in place about safety, quality, efficacy of products. That's the three market hurdles. You want to market a product, and you have to survive these three hurdles. But this makes the discussion of technology in terms of cost and benefits a little bit artificial, because the state has a responsibility for the risk, and the benefits are not anything else than the materialization of what comes on the market, because this is left over to market mechanisms. And as I argued before, I think in a lot of cases this can work well, but in a lot of cases we have reached the limits of our institutional regulatory mechanisms. We cannot assume anymore that the state is solely responsible for the risk and the companies for the benefits. We have to assume a new state responsibility also for what I call the right outcomes of research and innovation. And that means institutional renewal, that means indeed certain responsibilities come to policymakers, and there the question on research and innovation will be different. That means we have to rethink how we prioritize research efforts. Just to give an example again, if we think about nanotechnology, the previous European framework program, we put 7 billion euro on nanotechnology. Is this too much or too little? To me it sounds a little bit a lot. I think it is an example of hyping the technology. We have been promised airplanes which can fly like birds, nanorobots clean up our arteries in our blood. You just name what. But what did we get? We get socks which we can wear for 10 years. We can don't need to bring it in a washing machine, and teddy bears which we can give to our children, and they will remain hygienic. Well, great. So, you know, there is an issue of priorities there, how to reallocate the priorities. At the European level, I do honestly think we have started to think about it. So that's the answer to the grand challenges, the European innovation partnerships. There is something going there. Whether it will be successful or not, that's another story, but there is some thinking there, and again, this is of course the responsibility of policymakers here. And on the unpredictability, I think one needs to have some market monitoring. I think there has to be a correction to what the market does. I mean, you can think about what we actually already do with medicine authorization. We have a post-market monitoring of medicines, and we have a sort of assessment whether new medicines are better than the previous one, or otherwise we don't market them. That's actually sort of fourth hurdle. And so this is something we may have to think about.
Yes, I don't know, there's another book I could recommend to you called Bad Ideas by Professor Robert Winston. It's a few years old now. Oh, is it not? Rest harder to talk. A book called Bad Ideas, an arresting history of our inventions. And it catalogues inventions from the enclosure of fields by walls, you know, through to the Industrial Revolution to, 3 or 4 years ago. And one of the interesting aspects for me is it was not controllable, it's not controllable in any shape or form. And one of the sort of undercurrents here, I hear when we talk about responsible innovations, how are we going to control it? How are we going to get them? We're not going to control it. It's not controllable. And especially when we talk about very new technologies, guys making fluorescent jellyfish in garages with children, and you just think, oh my God, it's not controllable. And actually, it never was controllable. So there isn't this great land when it was all under our control that was there, and we've lost it. It never was. But I think there are mechanisms and there are sort of certain new things we need to think about, and I think your post-market control and more consideration of early warnings is also important. But, recognising an early warning. I've got a blog, my most successful blog was how to tell a nutter from an early warning. Because the trouble with early warnings, they look like nutters to you. They look like people saying stupid things that have got no relevance to your product in your lab. So we're going to have to think very differently about the way we view different perspectives and different viewpoints. I want one quick word to Renee about your 7 billion. You've just spent all this time talking about how it's a long-term thing. Now, your 7 billion is not for your nano silver socks, it's for 15 years' time. So you can't worry yet that you've wasted your 7 billion until maybe 30 years' time or 20 years' time. Because the money you've spent there, particularly the Commission, particularly some of those projects, are about this longer-term attention to the risks, but also the benefits that you're actually asking for. So even then, we still have to always think, allow the longer term. And if you start worrying about the socks and cancelling the next 6 billion, you won't get anything better. I know you've got a charge more money, but it'd be good if you were.
So, I thank everybody for joining this workshop. I thank especially to our speakers here. I think that they provided a lot of thought, a lot of food of thought for thought about responsible innovation, and there are lots of events, workshops, and conferences these 2 days here in FaRInn on responsibility and innovation. I hope that you will enjoy them all, and thanks again for being here.